Hello everyone, in this AV we would be talking about Searle's method for determining the coefficient of thermal conductivity, convection currents, blackbody radiation, Wien's law, Stephen's law and greenhouse effect. To start with, let's talk about Searle's method for determining the coefficient of thermal conductivity, that is K. So in the figure you can see the experimental setup for the Searle's method for finding out the value of K or the coefficient of thermal conductivity for a conductor. Let's assume that we have to find the coefficient of thermal conductivity for this rod AB. Once we understand the figure, then we will be able to understand the experimental setup. So we have to find the coefficient of thermal conductivity for this rod AB. So what we do is we take one end of the rod and place it inside a chamber where we are passing the steam through the chamber, or we can call it that one end of the rod is kept in a steam chamber. Other end of the rod B is wounded with a copper tube spiral through which a steady flow of water is maintained, and we have the water coming out from here. So the temperature, there is a thermometer placed to take the reading of the temperature of inflowing water and the temperature to take the reading of the temperature of the outflowing water. They are thermometer T3 and T4. Now there are other two thermometers T2 and T1 which are placed at a distance L from each other. Now these two thermometers are towards the side A. They will be also measuring the temperature. To maintain a good thermal contact, the rod AB is covered with cotton wool and is enclosed in a wooden box so that the heat escape is bare minimum. The different temperature shown by all these thermometers will be recorded until and unless they come to a steady state where they will be showing just one reading of the temperature. So we assume that temperature shown by thermometer T1 is theta1 and by T2 is theta2. Then the heat flowing through this rod Q can be given as Q equal to Ka theta1 minus theta2 multiplied by the time divided by the length. Here length is the distance between these two thermometers. Now K is the coefficient of thermal conductivity which we have to find out. Now suppose the heat is taken by the water flowing through the spiral tube. So the outflowing water will be collected in a beaker for time t and its mass is determined by the balance. Then using the formula for specific heat, in case you do not know, then I would just repeat that specific heat is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of the unit mass of a substance through a unit degree. So using that formula we have Q is equal to mc theta 4 minus theta 3. So this is theta 4 minus theta 3. Theta 4 is the temperature shown by the thermometer T4 and theta 3 is the temperature shown by the thermometer T3. Now equating these two equations, that is this equation and the equation for specific heat. Here Q is the heat supplied, M is the mass of the substance and C is the specific heat. So if we equate these two, then we can calculate the value of K, that is the coefficient of thermal conductivity. This method is known as Searle's method for determining the coefficient of thermal conductivity. In the previous AV we had talked about the process of convection. Now this is one experimental demonstration. If you remember, then convection is the process of heat transfer but where the material or the particles of the material carrying the heat, they leave their place and they move around, passing the heat. Now, how do we demonstrate it experimentally? Here they have taken a conical flask and there is a fluid inside the flask, and they drop some potassium permanganate in the flask. Once they start heating it, then they find these red granules moving up. Once this part of the fluid gets heated up, as we discussed earlier, it will become less dense and it will rise up. Once it rises up, we see some red granules also moving up, and slowly the next layer gets heated up, then the next, and finally once the ones which had gone up, they come down. So these going up and coming down of these red granules, they are known as convection currents. So this method of heat transfer, by which the material particles carrying the heat move from one place to another, is known as the convection. And there are convection currents in nature. That is why we have trade winds, then we have sea breeze and land breeze, then we have ocean currents. We would be discussing about the sea breeze and land breeze now. To understand sea breeze, look at this figure. What is happening is, we have air present over the land and over the sea. During day, when we have bright sunlight, the air over the land gets heated up faster because we have low specific heat of the sand. So here the wind or the air above the land gets heated up faster. Once it gets heated up, it will rise up. Once this air present over the land rises up, then these colder air present over the surface of the sea will take their place over the land, and we have the sea breeze as the air is blowing from the sea towards the land. At night, just the opposite of this happens. The land gets cooler or colder faster compared to the sea. So the air above the sea gets heated up and the air rises up. Once the air over the sea rises up, there is a vacuum created, and this will be filled up by the air coming from the land side. That is why this is the direction of the breeze, from the land towards the sea. That is why this is known as land breeze. Now when we talk about radiation, it is a process where the heat is transferred from one body to another without affecting the medium which is present in between them. And we had said that heat from the sun reaches us or on the earth by radiation. We have to understand that a body not only emits energy, but it will absorb energy. Whether it will emit or absorb energy, that will depend upon the temperature of the body. If the temperature of the body is higher than the surrounding temperature, then the body will emit radiation or emit energy. But if the body's temperature is lower than its surrounding, then it will absorb energy from the surrounding. And the radiant energy will depend upon two things. Firstly, the nature of the surface of the body and its temperature. When we talk about radiation, we have to understand that whenever there is a radiation falling on a surface, then there can be three phenomena taking place. If there is a surface and a radiation falls on it, then there can be three possible ways this radiation will behave, or three phenomena that will take place. Either it can pass through it, that is known as transmittance, or it will be absorbed by this surface, or some will be reflected. So these are the three phenomena that take place when we talk about radiation falling on a surface. Some part will be reflected, some part will be absorbed, and some part will be transmitted. Now, if we assume that Q is the total thermal radiation falling on a surface, then Q1 part of it, that is some part of it, is reflected back by the surface. So we assume that out of Q, that is the total radiation falling on the surface, Q1 has been reflected back. Another part, let's say Q2, is absorbed by the surface, and finally the leftover, that is Q3 part, is transmitted or radiated by the surface. So the total radiation Q is the sum of the all three parts, that is the part which is reflected back, the part which is absorbed, and the part which is transmitted or radiated by the surface. So we write Q is equal to Q1 plus Q2 plus Q3. If we bring this Q on the other side, then we have Q1 plus Q2 plus Q3 upon Q is equal to 1. We write Q separately for all these three. So we have Q1 upon Q plus Q2 upon Q plus Q3 upon Q equal to 1. So as we had discussed, Q1 is the part which is reflected back, Q2 is the part which is absorbed, and Q3 is the part which is radiated by the surface or transmitted by the surface. So the ratio Q1 by Q, Q1 by Q, Q1 is the part of total heat which is reflected back, and Q is the total radiation falling on the surface or total heat radiation falling on the surface. So the part which is reflected back upon the total, this ratio is known as reflectance, and it is denoted as small r. Q2 was the part which was absorbed by the surface. So Q2 upon Q. So absorbed part upon the total heat radiation. This ratio is known as absorptance and is denoted by small a. And then we have Q3 upon Q. Q3 is the part which is transmitted or radiated by the surface, and Q is the total heat falling on the surface. So this ratio is known as transmittance, which is denoted as small t. So now these ratios we substitute and write it as R, A and T. So instead of Q1 upon Q, we are writing R. For Q2 upon Q, we are writing A. And for Q3 upon Q, we are writing T. So reflectance plus absorptance plus transmittance for any surface or for a surface is equal to 1. Now for special cases, if we assume that for a particular surface it does not reflect any radiation falling on it, so the value of R will be equal to 0, and we also assume that it does not transmit any of the radiation falling on it, so T is also equal to 0. So in this case, this equation R plus A plus T equal to 1 will take the form as A equal to 1. Now A is the absorptance or absorptive power. Now these type of bodies for which the value of A is equal to 1 are known as black body. A perfectly black body is a body which absorbs all the radiations which is incident on it, or which absorbs the wavelength of all the radiations falling on it. So a perfectly black body is a body which absorbs all the radiation which falls on it of all sorts of wavelength. Hence its absorptance is equal to 1. So whenever a black body is heated up, when we heat a black body, then since it has absorbed all the radiation or radiation of all sorts of wavelength, so when it is heated up, it will emit the radiations of all wavelengths or all possible wavelengths. So we also define black body as a perfectly black body will be one which will absorb all the radiations which is incident on it of all wavelengths, and it will also emit radiations of all wavelength when it is heated to a very high temperature. So when we heat the perfectly black body or a black body, then the emissive power depends upon the absolute temperature, and the relation is given as E directly proportional to T to the power 4, where E is the emissive power and T is the absolute temperature. Now this relation, the emissive power is directly proportional to the fourth power of the absolute temperature, is known as Stephen's law. This is known as Stephen's law. Now we all know that if I have to remove this proportionality sign and bring in a equal to sign, then we have to introduce a constant. So in this case, E is equal to sigma T to the power 4. Now this sigma is known as Stephen's constant. The unit of this Stephen's constant or sigma is joule, m to the power minus 2, s to the power minus 1 and k to the power minus 4. Now in 1884, Boltzmann gave a theoretical proof, and he proved that Stephen's law is applicable only to a perfectly black body, and hence afterwards this law, which was initially known as Stephen's law, started to be known as Stephen-Boltzmann law. As per the definition of a perfectly black body, it is a body which will absorb all the radiations or radiations of all wavelength which is incident on it, and it will emit the radiation of all wavelength when heated to a very high temperature. So when we take the first definition, that a perfectly black body is a body which will absorb all the radiation or radiation of all wavelength which is incident on it, then we do not have any such body. So any known body cannot be called as a perfectly black body. There is another myth about black body is, that is, the black body should be black in color. So let's take the other example or other definition of the black body, which says that a black body is a body which should be able to emit radiation of all possible wavelengths. So if we think of this definition, then we have sun, which emits the radiation of all wavelengths. So we can call sun as a perfectly black body which is not black. So not necessarily that a black body will be black in color. So for practical purposes, we construct a black body as shown in this figure. So we take a double walled metallic hollow sphere with a very narrow hole O. Through this hole we allow light to go inside, or we incident a ray of light inside this metallic hole. The inside of this metallic hole is painted black. Just opposite to this entrance O or the hole O, a conical projection is made, so that when light is incident on this, it will suffer multiple reflection, and in the process the light will get absorbed and none of the light will be allowed to be transmitted or to go out. So this acts as a black body for experimental purposes. Now to study the spectral distribution of energy of a black body at different temperatures, in the year 1899, two scientists, they used electrically heated chamber with a narrow hole or narrow opening which was taken as a black hole, and they wanted to study the spectral distribution of energy. So what they did was, the radiation coming from this point O, which was acting as a black hole, was allowed or made to fall on a concave mirror M1. In this experimental setup, please note that we have used 3 mirrors and all 3 are the concave mirror, because concave mirrors are converging mirrors. They will focus all the rays at a particular point, and after getting converged from the mirror M1, they all passed through this narrow opening, that is slit S, and they were made to fall on the mirror M2, and then they were made to pass through a prism, and then finally they fall upon mirror M3, and then from this mirror M3 they fall on a thermopile, which is an electronic device that will convert the thermal energy into electrical energy, as we are measuring this temperature using a thermocouple, which is a sensor used to measure the temperature. So after it falls on a thermopile, there will be a which is connected with the galvanometer, and there will be a deflection in galvanometer, and that can be recorded. So after this experiment, they made a graph, and this is the graph. The graph is between the energy and wavelength. Wavelength is plotted against x-axis and energy is plotted on the y-axis. And we have different temperatures, let's say T1, T2 and T3. T3 being the highest temperature, T2 being the moderate, and T1 being the least. So what he observed was, let's talk about first the temperature T1. So initially, when they are emitting a light or a radiation which has different wavelength, you can see the wavelength starts from here and ends up to here. So initially in the curve there is a rise and then it falls. So this was the graph for the temperature T1, and we find that at this particular temperature, that is T1, the peak is at this point. Now for the second temperature T2, again the phenomenon is same. First it rises, reaches the peak and then comes down. Then finally for the highest temperature, that is T3, there is a huge rise, reaches the peak, and then there is a downfall. So what we observe is, peak for T1 is here, then it got displaced or shifted to T2. So from this point to this point, the wavelength has decreased. We are going from right towards the left, from this point to this point. So the wavelength has decreased. And furthermore, when the temperature increases, again the peak has been displaced from this point to this point. So on wavelength parameter, if we check, so from this point to this point, so again there is a decrease in the wavelength. So as the temperature increases, the energy emission will be maximum for the shorter wavelength. So we can say that as the temperature of the black body rises, the peak of the distribution curve shifts or get displaced towards the shorter wavelength, and this is what is Wien's law, which states that as the temperature of the black body rises, the maximum energy emitted radiation shifts towards the shorter wavelength, or we can write it as lambda m is inversely proportional to the absolute temperature. If we have to remove the constant of proportionality and bring in the equal to sign, then it would be lambda m is equal to B upon T, where this B is known as the Wien's constant, or we can write it as lambda m is equal to B upon T, or lambda m multiplied by T is equal to B. Now this Wien's constant or constant of proportionality has the SI unit as meter Kelvin, because this wavelength is measured in meters and temperature in Kelvin, and its value is 2.9 into 10 raised to the power minus 3. Now this relation is known as Wien's law or Wien's displacement law. Now we'll talk about Newton's law of cooling. So as we had discussed earlier, that for a body to radiate or absorb energy, that will depend upon the temperature of the body and the temperature of its surroundings. So if a body has a particular temperature, let's say T2, and the surrounding has a temperature T1, and we assume that T2 is greater than T1, that means the body is at a higher temperature than its surrounding, then in this scenario the body is going to radiate energy. Or if we say that T1 is greater than T2, that means the surrounding has got more energy than the body, then in this case there will be absorption of energy by the body from the surrounding. So based on this, Newton stated his law of cooling, saying that when a hot body is cooled in air, the rate of loss of heat from the body is directly proportional to the temperature difference between the body and its surrounding. So here they have simply stated that the rate of loss of heat is directly proportional to the temperature difference between the body and its surrounding. So rate of loss of heat is given as ddt of Q, rate of loss of heat, or change in heat with respect to time. And since this is a loss, so we will put a minus here, is directly proportional to change in temperature. So we assume that the body is at temperature T and the surrounding is at temperature T naught. So body is losing the energy or radiating the energy to the surrounding. So we have minus dq upon dt is directly proportional to the temperature difference, that is T minus T naught. So again, if we have to remove the proportionality and bring in a constant equal to sign, then we have to bring in a constant. So we write minus dq upon dt is equal to k T minus T naught. Now this k is a positive constant depending upon the area and nature of the surface. Now for a small amount of time, if we assume that the fall in temperature is dt for a small time interval, that small time interval will be denoted as d small t, and the temperature of the body falls by the amount d capital T. Then by using the specific heat formula, which states that Q equal to mst, so for small time the heat loss will be very small, so that very small heat loss will be denoted as dq is equal to m, that is the mass of the substance, multiplied by the specific heat of the substance, multiplied by the dt, that is the temperature or fall in temperature. Then from equation 1 and equation 2 we have minus ms dt. So what we are doing is basically we are substituting the value of dq from equation 2 in equation 1. So here instead of minus dq we write minus, and dq is substituted as ms dt. So minus ms dt upon d small t, that is the time, is equal to k T minus T naught. Now what we do is all the capital T's, they are for temperature, and this one small t denotes the time. So we bring all the temperatures or the terms containing the temperature together on left hand side. So we have this dt upon T minus T naught. We have it on the left hand side, which is equal to minus K, and this ms goes to the right hand side, multiplied by dt. Now this dt is the time factor. So this K is a positive constant or a constant. Mass of the substance is a constant. Specific heat of the substance is a constant. So three constants can be written as one constant. So we write it as capital K. So we have the equation as dt upon T minus T naught is equal to minus capital K dt. Now we simply rearrange the terms and integrate it. So here we have dt is being brought to the left hand side. So we have minus dt upon dt is equal to K T minus T naught. But instead of integrating this equation, let's integrate equation 3, which is dt T minus T naught is equal to minus K dt. So integration of this part dt T minus T naught is nothing but log T minus T naught, and on this part, since K is a constant, it cannot be integrated, and integration of dt will be T. So plus the constant of integration, that is C. So the equation looks like log T minus T naught equal to minus KT plus C. C is the constant of integration. Now antilog can be taken, or we can leave the equation here itself. After this, a graph has been plotted based on the Newton's law of cooling, which says that the rate of loss of heat will depend upon the temperature difference between the substance and the surrounding. So we find that initially when the temperature difference was very high, then the drop or the loss of heat was also very high. At a certain point, when the temperature became less, then the rate of loss of heat also started decreasing, and slowly the curve came down. That means the temperature became very low and the loss of heat also became very low. So this is Newton's law of cooling. Thank you. The last topic for us is greenhouse effect, which is also a part of Wien's displacement law. To understand this, let us understand this phenomenon. Suppose we have a substance and we surround it with a glass. Now whenever we have a glass, let's say this is a glass, and energy or the radiation is incident on it, then this radiation needs a certain amount of energy to be able to pass or penetrate through this glass. If it has energy less than this penetration energy, then it will be either absorbed or reflected back. So what happens is, sun has got a very high energy of the order 10 raised to the power 5 Kelvin. Now, so the energy is coming from the sun is able to penetrate this glass and reach this surface. Now this initially absorbs all the radiation which is incident on it. After a certain time, the temperature of this substance becomes higher than its surrounding. Now the moment the temperature of this substance becomes higher than its surrounding, it wants to radiate energy. So it starts to radiate energy. Now here the energy is of the ratio, let's say 300 Kelvin or 350 Kelvin, which is very less compared to the energy coming from the sun. So these radiations are not being able to go out from the glass. Instead, what happens is they are reflected back. Since these radiations are reflected back, they are trapped inside this. So overall the energy or the heat of this system rises up. Now this has an advantage as well as some disadvantages. The advantage is in European countries where the temperature is in minus or very low and vegetation cannot be supported, they use this for vegetation. And the disadvantage is this phenomenon is depicted by carbon dioxide molecules also. So because of various reasons, be it pollution, deforestation, burning of fossil fuels, when the amount of carbon dioxide rises in the atmosphere, what happens is it blocks the heat which has entered the Earth's atmosphere and it does not allow it to go back into the atmosphere. So it is basically blocked in the Earth's atmosphere and the temperature of the Earth rises up. So this is the disadvantage of the greenhouse effect. Thank you.